I still remember the day like it was yesterday. It was January 29th, 1992. No. I'm talking about the 29th. My oldest daughter was born on the 28th. But I'm talking about the day after. You remember the day after? And I think I've got this thing figured out too. You know, I've been raising children now for over 20 years. And I've been thinking about this, and I've got it figured out. But let me tell you what happened there. On January 29th, my wife's mother decided she was going to come and stay for a while. My wife's mother thought that she would come stay with us in our little 1,000-square-foot home after we had our first child. And I already had this figured out. I knew the deal. She didn't think we knew what we were doing. That was what it was. She did not think we knew what we were doing. So every chance I got, I would grab my daughter and I would just have her, you know. She's mine. And I remember this day, I'm pretty sure it was the 29th, 30th. I remember it like it was yesterday, the moment. And I was rocking my daughter. And she made a sound that only a grandmother would recognize, or a mother in the middle of the night. Maybe like a choking sound or a stop breathing sound. You ever heard anybody stop breathing? You can't hear it, but moms can hear it. And I'll tell you folks, this happened so fast, it's like a blur, but I remember it. My mother-in-law had my daughter out of my hands and was doing the Heine maneuver or the grandmother maneuver on her, whatever the maneuver was, to get her back. That I can't tell you how inadequate I felt as a new parent. I mean, I was really like, my daughter would have died that day, I'm convinced. And all that week, that first week that my mother-in-law was with us, if she hadn't been there, she saved her life many times. Now, I have a great in-laws, some of the greatest in-laws ever, and my wife knows that I love them. But as a new parent, I was dealing with a whole lot. And, that was 20-some years ago. And I want to tell you, there have been moments like that, even like this week, where I'm like, I'm not very good at this. You ever felt like that? You see, I've got this parenting thing figured out. As we start this parenting series, perfect kids need perfect parents. I think we're going to learn pretty quick that, hello, there are no perfect kids. You might think your kids are perfect, but just ask your brother or your sister, and he'll tell you your kids aren't perfect, but his are. And then you can tell him his aren't perfect, or your neighbor, or whoever it is. Somebody that feels close enough to tell you the truth, about your kids. But I got this figured out, Mike. I know what happens now, and it's happening to you right now. I can tell you. I can look at you and tell it's happening to you right now. And it's already happened to me. You see, before you get married, you're all buff and smart and all that stuff. And then you get married, and you're married for a little while, and you and your wife have these conversations, and it's like, oh gosh, did you see that snotty-nosed kid? We're never going to let our kids walk around with snot dripping down into their mouth, right? Just a high-five knuckle on that. And, it's kind of like that commercial, where the guy says, we're never having kids. Boom, they have kids. We're never getting a minivan. Boom, we got a minivan. And all those commercials. But here's what happens. And ladies, it happens to you more quickly. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not figured it all out. But here's what happens. In the wee purple hours of the night, after you have this child, I'm talking about the third or fourth night, when you're up at 3 a.m., 2 a.m., and you don't know if it's morning or night or what day it is or what's going on in the world, and you haven't seen Fox News or any kind of news or anything for weeks, and what's happening is your brain is starting to seep out of your head. I'm not kidding, this happens. Now, you can't see this happen, but your brain is just seeping out of your body. And that happens over the course of a child's life. And when the kid hits about 12, you're completely brainless. You're brainless. You're a complete idiot when the kid's about 12 or 13. I mean, you are finding out stuff that you didn't know you needed to know. You're like, hey, did you know your phone did that, Mom? Oh, really? Does that? Or do you know that you don't have to go to the TV anymore those were the days, you know. Or that your VCR, remember what a VCR was? Or that your, whatever it is, electronic device you've got, Mom, did you know it'll do that? Don't you know, don't you know you can go do this on the cable and you don't have to? And there's stuff you don't even know that you don't know yet until you have a 12-year-old in your house. And you realize you're a complete idiot. And so over the last 12 years, since you've had kids, your brain has seeped out of your head. I believe that's what happens. And the only way to beat this, Tim, is to space your kids out enough, like you did. Space them out enough to where you can recover. You can get your brain matter back. And you just, maybe that first one, maybe you just screwed up completely. It's like, I can't do anything now. He's on his own now. But maybe there's some hope for the little one, Maybe I've got a little bit left. Or have your kids later in life where you're just immune to the brain seepage because you've heard the story so long. But have you ever felt like that as a parent? You just felt totally inadequate. I remember so many instances of asking questions. Where's my owner's manual? So I thought we could help you out a little bit here. If you have a new baby at home, there are certain things you can do and certain things you shouldn't do, all right? And for instance, if your baby starts crawling or walking, and you get into stuff, there's ways to contain your child, and then there's ways you shouldn't contain your child, all right? Or how about when you lift your baby? Some of you guys are athletes, Some of you are athletes, and I know the temptation is like, I think I could palm that. You remember that testosterone, you see a basketball, I think I could palm that. And look, there's ways to lift your child and ways not to. Now, I've seen Ryan Fulmer do this with his kids, and he's got a big hand, though. Or making your baby smile, Hey, you've smiled the last 10 minutes. I get the camera out, and you stop smiling. Well, there's ways to do that and ways you shouldn't do that. Or feeding the baby, You can feed the baby, but, make sure it's the right stuff. Now, I have a daughter who at one time, she could clean a chicken leg bone off like it was slick as a whistle. I mean, she was the best. I'm like, wow, where did it go? She's a vegetarian now. And so there's right ways and wrong ways. Or waking your baby up in the morning, when you want to. There's ways to do that if you had an owner's manual. Or checking baby's diaper, Dad. Look, there's ways to do that. Don't learn the hard way, okay? It might just take you one time. Or some of you ladies go shopping, got to take your kids with you. It took you an hour and a half to get ready to go. Make sure you put the child in the right place in the cart, before you start throwing all your deals in. So, there's right ways and wrong ways. Now, I found this on Dear Abby because maybe it's not a little baby you have. Maybe it's a teenager. Maybe it's a middle schooler or something. So, I found this on Dear Abby. It's about this thing called twerking. Dear Abby, I'm the happily married mother of 2 teenage boys. The other day, I overheard my older son, age 17, talking with a friend about twerking. I have never heard of it, and now I'm worried. Is twerking a drug term? Is it similar to tripping, getting high, or catfishing? My 17-year-old is supposed to go to Princeton next year on a sports scholarship, and I'm afraid twerking will derail him from his charted path. Thank you for any advice you may have. And again, you see this mother, she is spazzing out about this kid who's been twerking with his friend. Now, I know some of you are like, I don't know what twerking is. And I'm so happy I know and you don't, if that's the case. But for those of you who do know, I'm going to spare you, the illustration, okay? And you can look online. But just so you know, it's not a drug term. People might be on drugs who are doing it, but it's not a drug thing. It's kind of a dance move. It's the dance move that's going to embarrass people who are doing it now, like when Dave Philbin and I get the 80s out again, and we start dancing, like we did back to the 80s music, which was the best music. But listen, whatever age your kid is, and maybe you're here today and you don't have any kids. Maybe you're single. I suspect that perhaps, statistically, God will give you the great privilege of being a parent one day. I believe that He might. Statistically, most people are parents. We're propagating and perpetuating the human race, at an astronomical, exponential rate today. So you may have the opportunity to be a parent, so you can get way ahead of the game today. And so we're going to talk about this opening message in this series is, let's just admit it, all right? I'm a parent. What's the next word? Let's say it together. I'm clueless. So you got the brain seepage happening, and if you don't know you're clueless, just wait till your kid gets about 12 or 13 and ask them some question about something, or just let it happen naturally, and you will find out quickly that you are a complete idiot and you're clueless. And somehow in the last 12 or 13 years, you lost your brain. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about this topic. You don't have to be clueless, all right? I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give you some help. Now, parenting's tough. I'll be the first to tell you. I'm in this middle of raising 4 young ladies and helping them to become young women. And I wish I could say it's always been easy. And I've been blessed. I've been blessed. And it's maybe not as hard as it is for some, but it's not easy. Parenting in today's society, today's generation, is hard to do. It's hard work. So think about that when you start having kids. Adam and Eve knew it was hard. Chapter 3, Adam and Eve, they sinned. Chapter 4, they had children. I don't know which was worse here, but they had kids. I want to read you some, and I want you to see how even Adam understood how hard it was to parent. This is Genesis chapter 4. If you want to turn in your smartphone or whatever, it's on the screen. Adam made love to his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. This is the New International Version. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Of course, it was really just a little bitty baby boy. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now, Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and on his offering, He did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right," and I love this phrase right here, "sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where's your brother Abel?" "I don't know." You ever heard that from a kid? "I don't know." "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." So one day we'll be in eternity, and hopefully we'll all be in heaven. And we'll be able to ask some people some questions. There's some great historical figures scattered throughout the pages of history that I'd love to talk to and say, "Hey, why did you do that?" Or "How did you do that?" Or, "Tell me more about this." But I want to tell you, I think I want to go back to Adam, and we might ask Adam a question right at the beginning. We might say, "Adam, where were you? Where were you?" That's the question God asked Adam in the very beginning. He said, "Adam, where are you?" And I think it was more than his physical presence. I think God was insinuating there. He was letting us know that Adam had not only left him spiritually, but he was relationally out of touch with what was going on in his life. You see, the Bible says in Genesis 3 that when the snake slithered into the garden and brought this temptation, that Adam was standing right beside his wife. He was right there. But he wasn't really there because he didn't do anything to stop it. Men, as the spiritual leaders of the home, we have an obligation, a responsibility to be there. Not just to hand over money or whatever it is. We have a responsibility to be there and to do some things for our family. So we turn the page to chapter 4, and I want to know this answer. Adam, your boys were growing up, learning how to sacrifice to God, and maybe that's who they learned it from. But I want to know, when there was this conflict, when they went out to the field, when this animosity was growing in Cain, where were you? What were you doing? Why weren't you there? We can heap a lot on Adam, but I think if we stand in front of the mirror, we might all say, you know what? As a parent, maybe I need to be there. I just kind of feel clueless. So, in this series, we're going to try to help you. We're going to try to give you some tools. Ryan is going to preach a couple messages, our student minister here, and he's going to talk about social media and some of the bad stuff going on there, because, again, some of that stuff, I'm clueless. But I'm learning. And like next week, I think next week's a good topic. We're going to talk about, what if I did everything right and my kids still turned out wrong? What if I raised them in the church and they still are out partying every weekend and they don't have anything to do with good or God? So next week is that topic. You know what? What do I do now? What do I do now? My child is, I thought I did it right, but evidently I didn't do it right. What do I do? Is there grace? Of course. Is there redemption? Is there forgiveness? Yes. But what can I do now? And we'll talk about that next week. But what I want you to know this week is this. You, parent, mom, dad, you are God's first tool, and most powerful tool, I would add, in making a disciple of your child. Look, long before the church came into being, long before God established the church on the day of Pentecost, He established the family. It was the family, and it had a mom, and it had a dad, and the children, and it was the dad's responsibility and mom's responsibility to make sure that these little things that looked a little bit like them, that were growing up in their home, that they became lovers of God and obedient to God. That was their job. Somewhere along the line, in modern history, Christian parents want to pass off their responsibility of raising children in the Lord and making disciples of them to the church. And I want to tell you, we just don't have your kids here long enough. We just don't have them long enough. They're with us, what? Maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours a week? And they're with you all the rest of the time, or at least they're not with us. Maybe they're not with you. Maybe they're with their friends. Maybe they're in front of the TV. I want to tell you, we got to take control of this, don't we? Not just making them do this, this, and this, but I'm saying as parents, we got to understand that it is our job to make disciples out of our children. It's not an easy job. Maybe one of the hardest jobs you ever do. But it's your job if you brought a child into the world. So, God, I think, watched Adam raise the rest of his children after Cain killed his brother Abel. There was Seth. There was a bunch of other kids that aren't even named, repopulating or populating the earth, rather. And then he watched these dysfunctional families throughout the book of Genesis, like Abraham. He had Isaac, and then. But Abraham, he had some issues because his wife Sarah couldn't have a child, so he went into Hagar, and then we got Ishmael, and so there's some dysfunction there, and then you got Isaac, and he's got not as many problems, but then Isaac, has Jacob and Esau, these twins, and they're always fighting, and Jacob's deceiving. And then Jacob has all these sons, but his favorite son's Joseph, and he lets everybody know about it and buys him a multicolored coat and spoils the kid, and so much so that his brothers hate him and they leave him for dead or sell him into slavery. And so God is watching this dysfunction of families throughout the book of Genesis and this recorded history that we have. And when finally, when Moses is leading the people out of Egypt into the promised land, God says, look, we got to get something straight here, and I want to talk to you parents. That's what he says. He says, before we get into the land and we get settled, I want to talk to you parents, because you're the key to the next generation. If Christianity is wiped off the map, if recognizable Christianity is wiped off of the map in America, it'll be the parents' fault. If Christianity disappears the way we know it, it'll be parents' fault. And that's a heavy-duty responsibility, isn't it? So God said, look, when we get into this land, I want to set you down, and I want to talk to you. And that's what he does. And so in Deuteronomy, the 5th book of the Torah, the 5th book of the Bible, God is talking to parents here, mainly, in chapter 6. This is what we call, or the Jewish people call, the Shema. Shema. It's a fun word to say. Say it with me. Shema. It's like a SH and then an apostrophe and then an MA. Shema. And it means in Hebrew to hear, because that's what the verse says. And this is God talking to parents saying, here's what I need you to do. Here we go. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. All right, so we've established who God is. And then he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Then he goes on to say to these parents, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. So God is saying, look, basically, here's who I am and here's what you need to do. Parenting's tough work. It's going to be hard for you, but here's what you have to do, because you are the first tool in making a disciple. And again, if you're not a parent yet, or you don't think you'll ever be a parent, you can check out a little bit, but I still think this is good stuff for you, okay? So, what does it take to be a good parent? I think good parenting starts with love. Isn't that what God said? Isn't that what Moses said? Love the Lord your God. How? With all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might or strength. The different versions have it different ways. Love God. So, I think God has given us a prescription. He's given us a prescription to be a good parent, even though we're clueless. You can be completely clueless and still be a good parent. Did you know that? That should make you happy. You can continue to be a clueless parent. Your kid can still think you're a complete idiot, but you can still be a good parent. Did you know that? Isn't that wonderful? Because a lot of us are complete idiots when it comes to a lot of things, and we can never stay ahead of our kids on a lot of this stuff. So what does it take? What did God just say? You know, in the New Testament, when somebody came to Jesus and said, hey, what's the greatest commandment? This is the one they quoted, Deuteronomy chapter 6. So good parenting starts with love, and first of all, we should love God. That's what it says. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Love God. Parents, do your kids know that you love God? Do they know that you love God? Do they ever hear you pray? Do they see you in church? Well, obviously you're here today. Do you bring them to church? There are a lot of parents who drop their kids off at church, and that's where they have the mentality, I'm either going to take a break for a little while the church babysits my kids, or I want them to be there, but I don't really have to be there. Look, this is the first step in being a good, clueless, but good parent. Love God. Love God. Man, that's a tall order, is it? Is that a tall order? Love God. Just live your life where your kids know. You can say a lot of things about my mom, but I want to tell you something. She loves God. She loves the Lord. You can say a lot of things about my dad, how he does this and how he does that, but I want to tell you something. He loves the Lord. Can your kids say that about you? Will they say that about you? You know, my dad, boy, he's the greatest. He can throw a ball further than anybody. That's cool. My dad, you know, he's the smartest guy. He knows the answer to every question. Yeah, that's great. At some point in their life, you want them to be able to add to that resume you have in their mind. Oh, yeah, my dad loves God too. If your child were preaching your funeral, what would they say? Would they say, you know, I'm going to miss him, but I'm so thankful they showed me how to love God. And that's what it says, is when you walk along the road, show your kid what it's like to love God. When you sit down to eat, show them what it's like to love God. When you get up in the morning, show them what it's like. When you lay down at night, show them what it's like. It's not sitting them down and saying, hey, you're going to love God because I said so. That's our favorite line, isn't it? Why, Mommy? Why, Daddy? Because I said so. Well, sometimes that's necessary. But what works best is when they say, you know, I see this. Later on in that chapter, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, you can read it for yourself sometime. And I'll paraphrase it. Moses is writing here, and he's telling them, this is what you got to do. And you got to impress this on your children. And later he says, and when your son asks you later, he says, Daddy, why do we go to church? Mommy, why do we read the Bible? Dad, why do we pray every time before we eat? Why is this important to us? Then Moses said, when that happens and your kid says, why do we do this? Then you say, I'll tell you why, son. Because I want you to know God has done great things for us, our family. He brought us out of Egypt. We were slaves in Egypt, and He delivered us. And we're here today living in this land flowing with milk and honey. And we have all this. I mean, you have a TV, and you know, we've got nice cars and a nice home, and we have all this today because God gave it to us. He gave it to us. He's allowing us to use this. Oh, wow. God's really good to us, isn't He, Dad? Yeah, it really is. So, you got to love God. You got to find out what that looks like in your life. And you got to love Him. And then I think we got to love each other. Now, I'm not talking about you and me loving each other. I'm talking about me and her loving each other. Okay? There's different kinds of love in the Greek language. You know, there's phileo love. And that's the kind of love a lot of us have. They were friends. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Phileo. Simon, do you have friendly love for me? Yeah. We love each other. And then there's agape love. That's the godly love. That's unconditional love. That's the kind of love we should have, not only for each other, but for the people in the world. But the kind of love I like the best as a dad is the eros love. We get the word erotic from that love. So, look, I can still remember when I was a kid. I don't remember this first time, but I remember seeing this. I remember looking up. And my dad is not real expressive. My sister's here today, my older sister. National Sibling Weekend, I guess. And my dad wasn't really that expressive. Our dad wasn't with our mother. But I can still remember one of the first times where I saw them, you know, kiss. It wasn't anything, it wasn't a submarine kiss or anything like that, you know. You know what a submarine kiss is, don't you? It's where you go down, you submerge, and you stay under. It's a submarine kiss. And it was just a kind of a peck, but I'm like, oh, my dad loves my mom. You seen that little commercial where these two people are getting married and they already have kids? And she said, your dad just kissed my mom. I love that little commercial. But you know what that says to your kids? Hey, Mommy and Daddy love each other. Or when they go up to your bedroom and they say, ooh, it's locked. Because they know when the door is locked, don't come and knock. Come on, we're parents here. We had to have kids, right? Love each other. Love each other. You see what happens a lot of times is we get kids and we stop loving each other. And we start loving the kids. Oh, I love God. I love the kids. Look, you want to be a good parent? You be a good husband. You be a good wife. You have a great marriage. Have a great marriage. So that your kids can say, wow, my parents are in love. Look, they're holding hands. Well, they love each other. The door's been locked every day this week. What's going on? We're in love. What's happening today in our culture is that parents are throwing in the towel on their marriage while still trying to love God and love their kids. It's just something doesn't work right that way. It just doesn't. It's not the way God designed it to work. If your kid thinks that you love her more than you love your husband, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems. If you love your child more than you love your wife, you're going to have problems. Because I want to tell you that you're going to have an empty nest one day. And all you're going to have left is a loveless marriage. One of the best things you can do, the best thing you can do is have a vibrant relationship with God. The second best thing you can do for your kids, even though you're clueless, is to love your spouse like you're still on your honeymoon. Just love them. Now, obviously life happens and, his breath stinks and he makes noises and sounds and smells and leaves stuff laying around and she burns the bread or something, which I like burnt bread personally. Or, things happen and life happens, but look, it's not like when we were dating where we didn't have to live together. We're living together now because we're married. But still, there's got to be, remember the skit guys last week, some mommy and daddy time. And that's got to happen. If this does not happen, it will not work right. And of course, you have to love your kids. Got to love your kids. And we don't have much trouble doing that, do we? I mean, from the moment they're born, they're just beautiful. They're just easy to love. They're easy to love. They're easy to love until at one point they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, and you say, no, stop it. And they look up at you like, oh, a new word. I've never heard this word. What does this word mean? No. What does stop it mean? I don't know what this means. And here's what happens with oftentimes with divorce, and even with parents who aren't divorced, is that we want to be their friend, and we want their approval, but we don't want to be their parent. We don't want to set any guidelines. We don't want to make them angry or upset. And so oftentimes, divorced parents will use their kids as tools. Hey, they don't say this, but here's what they're saying. If you like me better, I'll give you money. I'll give you whatever you want. And listen, if you're a kid out here and you're in a divorce situation, you need to see right through that, all right? You need to see through whoever's trying to buy you off. And I know it's going to be hard for you because you're getting what you want. But what they're trying to do is use you as a pawn, as a tool to get back at their ex now, so that you'll like them better, and she'll suffer more, he'll suffer more. You got to see right through that, and you've got to be mature enough to say, I need what I need, and not always what I want. And discipline is good, but I've never heard a kid yet say, will you please discipline me? Maybe there'll be a first, Jacob, or perhaps, since you guys have had some time to recover. But you know what? Parents, shame on us if that's the way it's happening. Look, you can't get these out of order. I cannot stress that enough. You cannot get these out of order. If you take number 1 and shift it down to number 3, it won't work. You will not be a good parent. If you do what a lot of parents do, and you shift number 3 to number 1, and let the other 2 fall where they will, it will not work. Oh, it might feel good for a little while because kids are having fun. It's Sunday. I'm not in church. That's not important to me. I'm not showing them how I love God. I'm not doing what I should be doing. But man, we're having a blast out here. It's not going to work. But one day you're going to grow. You're going to get older, and you're going to say, "Why don't you want to be a Jesus follower? Why are you doing that? Why are you involved in this? Why can't you pick better friends?" Well, you didn't have your priorities right when they were little. If you get these out of order, it will not work. You got to keep these in this order. It's the prescription. It's easy. Just do it in this order. And when you do it in this order, you will be maybe clueless. It's okay to be clueless, but you'll be a good parent. And I know if you're in a divorce situation, it's hard. It's got to be hard. But you cannot sacrifice being a good parent for being your child's friend. Your child has plenty of friends already. They don't need you to be their friend alone. They need you to be their parent. Then you can be their friend. Let's be their parent and then be their friend. And I'm doing this because I love God. So dads, moms, if you get these in order, if you do them right, it will allow you to do the 2 things that parents do best for their children. They provide and they protect. They provide things like physical needs. They provide things like intellectual stimulation, whatever our child is, we need to help them get a little smarter, get a little better, and wherever they are, we need to help them with their emotional needs, how to understand what's going on in their heart and in their little brains. And we need to not neglect the spiritual needs. And that's the one we often neglect, but that's a need because they're going to grow up with this huge hole in their heart. Everybody has one because we were made in the image of God. And so the question is, what are you going to help them fill it with? In this area, a lot of young people are filling that hole with the plea for significance or the search for significance through drugs. And they're dying left and right. Now, I'm not saying that's the parent's fault, but I'm saying I want to raise my children to know that when you have a need for fulfillment in your life, when you have a need for worth, you're not going to get that from a drug or some kind of an activity that's going to harm you. You're going to get it from getting back in touch with your Creator and letting Him fill that hole in your heart and loving Him. Love Him. So you teach them to start this cycle in their life. You're not married yet? Well, that's okay. You love God. You start loving God. And you will gravitate towards somebody else who loves God. And then the 2 of you can love each other. And then the 2 of you will get married and have kids, if God allows. And then you can start loving your kids. And then you can teach them to do this whole process over and over. But if you're not married yet, what you should be doing is loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And when you're a parent, you can provide and you can protect. So it's a very normal thing, dads, if you're cleaning your gun when he comes to pick her up, that's normal. He needs to know you're the protector. You protect. You are the ones who picked her up the first time when she fell and scraped her head or broke her arm. You are the ones who were there to keep the bad guys away or to keep her out of the street or to keep him from killing himself or poking his eye out or something. And so now this transfer of protection happens now because now she's loved by somebody else. It's a great cycle. And look, I'm convinced that you and I can be clueless but still be good parents. We can be good parents. Matter of fact, I have embraced Clueless. I've embraced it. And it's hard. It's just hard. There's somebody making another app. There's just one more app that I don't have that my kids will have, and I don't know how to use it. So, but I can be a good parent. I remember another day, so many days in my past that I can remember as a parent. And, you know, my kids need to be on warning because this is a parenting series, and there's should be no story off limits, right? You guys agree? I mean, it's for the sake of the church that I should be able to tell the stories on my kids. I mean, so I'm digging them out this week, and we're going to get into some stories for my kids. And if I have to make a few up, you know, I'm not against doing that. I'll tell you at the end. But I remember a day in 2003 when we were in the old building before we had built this, and I was standing in front of the church, and I think it was late summer. I'd been wrestling with God for several months. I mean, I was just in agony, and my wife was in agony, and my kids probably suspected some things. You see, in February of that year, my wife had a miscarriage. And I don't know if you were around then in those days, but, you know, I talked a lot about having another child, you know, a fourth child. And so we got pregnant, and she miscarried in February. And so that was kind of like, oh. And those of you ladies who have miscarried, you know how that feels. It's just the promise of a child that, you know, it just slips away. And some of you miscarry a lot later than my wife did, which makes it harder, I think. And then in June of that year, well, actually before that time, I found out, I think I knew when she told me she'd miscarried, that my unit was deploying to Iraq. And that was before the days of, you know, deployments, before the cycle really got into swing. And as far as we knew, you know, we're going to be gone for 12, 15 months, and we might not ever see our family again. So I've been wrestling with God, and I said, God, how can you do this? If you're in control, how can you do this? How can you take me away from my children? They're little girls. In 2003, you know, they were in middle school and elementary school. Little girls. How can you do this? This isn't good. It's not right. How can you take me away from my family? I mean, how can I go for 15 months and not be there for my family? And my church, God, the church was doing well at the time, and well, how can you take me away from my church? I can still remember standing in front of the congregation, and I'd been wrestling with this. I was almost angry. I don't know if you were there in that service. Most of you probably weren't. Some of you might have been. And I couldn't control the tears. I started crying. And I realized somewhere in that process, God whispered to my heart. And he said, guess what? Those aren't your girls. That's not your family. That's not your church. It's mine. It's my church. Your wife and your family belong to me. And I love them a lot more than you do. I'm like, wow. God loves my kids more than I do. He loves my wife more than I do. That is an incredible moment. So we can stand and sing the song we're about to sing. That when it comes to parenting, God is the ultimate parent. He is for us. He's our biggest cheerleader. That's what he does. He is a parent. First and foremost, he's a parent. And he wants us to do a good job at this. We don't have all the answers. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to blow it. We're going to have to say, I'm sorry. But we can still be good parents if we get that prescription in order up there and pursue him. So stand up with me, parents and non-parents. Only if you're a parent or non-parent, stand up. Grandparents. See, I think it's the grandparent stage is when you get your brain back. When you become a grandparent, all of a sudden, and if you're a grandparent out there, you can verify this. I've not had that privilege yet. But if you're a grandparent, I think that's when you get your brain back. Your grandkids look at you and say, wow, my grandpa's so smart. My grandmother, she's so wonderful. What a great progression, huh? I'm going to pray for you. Lord, thank you for these parents, and some who will be and some who still are, but they're in the grandparent stage. What an awesome privilege you've given us. Lord, I thank you for helping me to be a parent. When I came here, my oldest 2 are 4 and 3, and Lord, this church has helped them to grow up, help them become the young women that they are today. But you know, God, that you gave them to me and my wife for this little while. And I pray that we present them to you, a disciple, a follower, a lover of Jesus. That's our only goal. Education was great, Lord. Becoming a nurse, some profession, was just icing on the cake. But Lord, what I'm most proud of is that I can say that my girls are lovers of God and they're followers of Jesus. My greatest accomplishment. Lord, may that be our prayer as parents. And if there's 1 or 2 here today, Lord, who've gotten this prescription out of order, if they've kind of confused it or twisted it, I pray today would be their day of repentance, perhaps of decision. Maybe they need to put you into their life so that they can get things straight. Lord, it's so hard being a parent today. I just pray you give them courage and strength to do this. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you want to come forward today and talk to me about your situation, you want to be baptized today to obey Christ, begin your life of following him, maybe you want to put roots down here, I just invite you to come as Arian leads us in this song.